Today, April 29th, is Undiagnosed Day. So imagine knowing something is wrong with you, having symptoms, having surgeries maybe, and doctors have no clue exactly what's going on with you. So today, being Undiagnosed day is a day to raise awareness for the millions of people out there who are still searching for answers, who are still searching for a diagnosis, and who are just in that kind of spot in their journey where they just have no clue what's going on with them. Feels like nobody's listening, but they know that something is wrong. Sometimes even doctors know something is wrong, but cannot put an answer to it. So that's what Undiagnosed Day is about. And I've been in that boat. And I want to share a little bit of my undiagnosed story and just talk about why today is important. So I went 25 years undiagnosed. So 25 years literally from birth to 25 years old, experiencing symptoms of a disease that we had no clue that I had. And part of that is because it's an extremely rare disease, and that's often where undiagnosed patients kind of live, is those who have these rare or and very complex conditions. So conditions that doctors are not familiar with, that may be similar to other conditions, but they are not diagnosed with that condition. It's not adding up. But typically, it's rare disease patients who are in this world of being undiagnosed, and that's where I was. And for me, in my journey, I was literally born with signs of a disease, that something was wrong with my skeleton. They didn't really know why, but also didn't. It wasn't anything that was so serious and just immediately out there that they thought needed attention. That it could be just some skeletal abnormalities, maybe something that could be fixed or would correct on its own. But I was born with very bowed legs, severe bowed legs that didn't correct. It wasn't your standard baby bowing that they call that corrects as you grow. I had to wear braces and was born with some scoliosis. And throughout my life, throughout my childhood, especially, and into my teen years, I experienced broken bones and all of this stuff, just breaking bones, having surgery, dislocating shoulders, broke my nose several times. And so uh, doctors never thought anything of it other than maybe that I was just clumsy. And I've told my story before, but I think that it's always important on Undiagnosed Day to kind of revisit it. It helps me. And so I went through all of that, and things really kind of took a turn when I turned the age of 18. But I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 17, and I was on some medication that can have some side effects related to the bones, so osteoporosis, um, something called avascular necrosis, which I did develop. But I was on a short course of steroids, and that's what caused it, prednisone. And it wasn't a like heavy dose of steroids, and it was a short couple of months tapering off kind of thing. Not enough really for it to do the damage that it did to my bones, but I mean, it gave me osteoporosis, it gave me avascular necrosis in both of my hips and both of my knees, and I ended up having my hips replaced at age 20. And so between all of that, and by the time I turned 24, I was working on a master's degree, and I dislocated one of my hip replacements just getting out of bed, and I had to have my hips completely redone. So I had my hip replacements replaced. So I had revisions at age 24. And that was the moment in my life where I was like, this is not right. Like, this is crazy that this is happening to me and that I'm undergoing the surgery again as a 24-year-old for hip replacements that should have lasted 10 to 15 years. And so I did some digging and started down a road of trying to figure out what was wrong with me because nobody else was doing it. Doctors weren't doing it. They just weren't putting it all together, and attributed it to a short course of prednisone, and I had severe osteoporosis, and none of it made sense. And so I started digging. And I did. I dug and looked at my medical records and just looked at research papers, that like Googling my symptoms and some of my lab work, and eventually came across hypophosphatasia. And long story short, that diagnosis was right. I was diagnosed by a geneticist, and here I am. So that was 8 years ago now, almost, that all of that went down. And overall, I've had 28 surgeries related to my rare genetic disease. But the hardest part of that entire journey was the undiagnosed part of it, the not knowing. I mean, I was 18 years old, I just turned 18, and they told me that my hips were going bad. I was an 18-year-old, I mean, kid, really. I felt like a kid. And they told me my hips were going bad. And I was like, okay, that's odd, but okay. And then they when I was 20, my hips got to a point where they were hurting so bad and the bone started to collapse that I had to have hip replacements. And I was like, okay, it doesn't feel normal, but I get that the progression of the avascular necrosis, I get that. So, and then not only that, all the bones that I broke as a kid and the surgeries that I had prior to hip replacements, I had dislocated my shoulders, I had a lot of teeth issues, broken a lot of bones, had surgeries on my nose, and it was a lot. It was so much, but knowing, especially after the hip replacements and then subsequently being diagnosed with severe osteoporosis, and I hadn't been on steroids for years, realizing that something was wrong with me and that my body was kind of giving out was hard, and I didn't have an answer for it. Nobody had an answer. We didn't know exactly what was going on, and I could feel that my body and the disease was progressing, an unknown disease, but I could feel whatever was going on was progressing, and we were not trying to find an answer to it. And truthfully, I didn't know what to do either. Kind of in some of that period, I was kind of just in denial for part of it, knowing that sure, maybe steroids, the prednisone did cause a lot of these issues, but then as I continued to experience, one, steroids wouldn't account for all the bones I broke pre Crohn's disease diagnosis and pre steroids, because I broke a bunch of bones between the ages of, I think, 10 and up until 17. I broke a ton of bones, had a bunch of dislocations, and so it obviously wouldn't account for that, and then it wouldn't account for you know the the progression of the osteoporosis that happened so quick. Like, there's just a lot of things that didn't make sense about the prednisone story. But I was like, okay, well, maybe that's it. But I didn't really think anything of it until I got to when I was 24 years old and I dislocated my hip replacements and had to have that surgery. That's kind of the moment that I go back to in my journey and in life that really set me on a path to try to get a diagnosis or to try to figure out obviously what was wrong with me. And I did a lot of work to figure it out. And I feel like I got a little lucky in some of it, but also had access to a lot of research papers and knew not what to look for, but knew enough as a master's in biomedical research that I was working on. So knew enough to kind of be able to identify trends and things like that. And I did identify trends in my lab work that led to my diagnosis. But looking back, the realization that something is wrong with me, that nobody knew what was wrong with me, that it could be something very serious, and that I could feel that the disease was progressing, that was scary and it was terrifying. I was a 20 and 24-year-old kid undergoing surgery that people my age just rarely had to do. And if they did, it was usually for some kind of traumatic reason, like they broke their hip really bad or, were in some kind of accident that did something to their hips where they just had to have it replaced, or they were born with some kind of genetic condition of their hips. Like, it wasn't just like people who were 18 or 20, their hips were going bad and they had to have hip replacements. And so the realization that that was happening, it was just terrifying. I didn't know if I was going to lose the ability to walk, or would this progress to maybe my spine and other places. And I was a young man at that point, and I had a lot I wanted to do with my life. And so yeah, it was scary. And to be in that place, there are so many people, there are millions of people actually who are in kind of a similar journey. People who are undiagnosed, people who clearly have something wrong with them, have some sort of complex or rare condition, and are in the same boat. And that's what Undiagnosed Day is about. It's about those people, people like me who are in that boat, who were undiagnosed, who had no clue what was going on. Today is to bring awareness for them because it's important. Number one, it's important for undiagnosed patients to know that they are seen, that they are heard, that they are valued, that that there is support for them, that there's a network of support out there for undiagnosed patients. And so it's just so important to bring awareness to this and to give that community a space and a day, and to support them in that way, and for them to know that there are people who have been in that position like me, who did end up getting a diagnosis and was able to put a name to what was going on, and that there's there's hope for them, that there's hope that one day we'll figure it out. And there are cases where people have some sort of disease that we don't have a name for, So there's so much work to be done in that regard to be able to advance the science and the medicine and the diagnostics and like the genetic testing to be able to put a name to stuff like that. And so there's just so many things that today and awareness is important for related to being undiagnosed. But my message to undiagnosed patients is that I hope that you continue to push for answers, that you trust your body. As patients, we know our body is better than anybody. We know and can tell when something is wrong, and we have to, go with that feeling, go with that gut feeling, and continue to push and to fight. And I hope that you continue to do that. I know that it's exhausting. I know that it's scary and terrifying and frustrating, and there's just all these emotions that come with it. I know that place, but I also know that the best thing I ever did was decide to do my own kind of investigation of my symptoms and my lab work and everything, and to make that decision for myself when doctors wouldn't do it. I decided to do it, and it shouldn't be that way. Doctors should investigate more and look for certain signs and look for what we call the zebra in the rare disease community. And so I hope that you know that I support you. I'm here for you. Please reach out if you ever need me, if you ever need support or just somebody to talk to. I'm here for you because I've been there and I know how challenging it is. But please keep up the fight and please reach out if you need anything. And I hope that you share your story and get that diagnosis. But please don't give up. Please keep fighting and know that there's a network of people out there and people like myself are here to support you on this journey to get a diagnosis. So please just keep fighting and please reach out if you need anything. But today, April 29th is Undiagnosed Day.